All right. Good morning, everybody. I wanted to take a minute and walk through these work papers, the work paper series one. Had a handful of questions about it, and I think the easiest way is to just go through and talk about it for a minute. Normally, we would, have done this live in class, but I think that going ahead and posting something up where I actually talk you through it versus just giving you this Word document that you see in front of you um, with instructions on it. I think it'll make things a little more clear. And so let me show you what I've got open here. I've obviously got the Word document open that has the different the different work papers that we're going to work on. I also have the blank file open that needs to be filled out. And then I also have an example from a prior class that we can look at. So let's flip back over. So as I said here, I went ahead and did work paper 104. There is a grade associated with it. Everyone will get full credit. We were running behind. I was running behind last week, and I didn't get the opportunity to really have you guys sit down and work on this. And though it doesn't take a ton of time, it would take some time. And so I went ahead and prepared it for you. Now, you really should read through it like that. That's, in all honesty, it'll give you an idea of what the kinds of sort of what the different agencies do. It'd be, 5 minutes to read through it. But if you look at it, you can see I broke down a pretty decent little paragraph, two to four sentences for what all these different services are. And the big things to consider are some of the like operating hours. When do we expect people to be there or not? Um, that kind of stuff. And the reason that that's important is because that can factor into. So what that does is that takes us straight into the work papers you guys are actually doing. So the preliminary review, work paper 1-1. So review the explanation of fields file, open and review the data file and map the explanation of fields, brainstorm MCC codes and MCC keywords and merchant names that would indicate the right. So what does all that mean? Well, what it effectively is wanting you to do is brainstorm the types of things that that might cause you to question, well, why did they have a charge to this? Why did they do that, this or that? And right now you don't know any of that. So you have to come up with things that, that are plausible for, well, maybe this doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We should look into that. And to give you, let's just look at an example. Um, so in this example, and I don't want you to go through and even though we have this record, don't go through and just copy these. Um, you know, some of they're good. Some of them, a lot of them are good ideas. You can use stuff around, but I expect you to come up with some of your own stuff too. If you just get through and copy these, that won't be sufficient. But here, like these folks, they looked through and they thought about bars and places where you're going to actually buy alcohol. And like I'd said in the one thing, certain agencies do have the ability to purchase alcohol for certain activities, um, but generally it's not permitted. And so, incurring costs in an actual bar or cocktail lounge may be, outside the scope of what they're supposed to be doing. And these words are typically taken from, like, if you were to go look at 5813, which I have, well, let's just, where is it? Commercial category codes. Loading. So if I do control in 5813, it is literally drinking places alcoholic beverages, bars, taverns, nightclubs, cocktail lounges, and this cassette. I don't. Um, so they just put a couple keywords in there, basically out of that description. All right. So they took the description, put a couple keywords in there, and then they put, why do they think it should be used? These services should not be purchased using a business credit card because they do not align with the needs of the government entities. This would only be a valid spending if the uh, expense if the business served food for a business event or function. And that's what I said. Like some people were flagging things at like Applebee's and Chili's because they are coded under this 5813 as like a bar or whatever. But they're also predominantly food places. So some of those, honestly, it doesn't even make sense to mention. This isn't, we're not doing completeness on this. We're looking for things that could be wrong. And so, if you're searching and excuse me, you have a bunch of, Chili's or Applebee's or Longhorn Steakhouse or whatever it happens to be, you don't want to just automatically assume that those aren't allowed because chances are they were just having dinner. And without, we don't have receipts, we only have the data that we can see. And so to make that leap of, it's not even judgment, to make that leap of connection, saying, well, they were at Applebee's or Chili's, so they must be drinking. Like we can't just do that. Like we ourselves don't have anything that proves that. Now, if we do mention it, then there people could review it and see, like, oh yeah, they've got 5 beers on this receipt that they had to submit, just no one had noticed. We should go back and reject part of this. So like that could happen, but generally it's not going to be all that likely. Um, so anyway, that's the kind of stuff. Game, toy, and hobby shops, probably a personal expense. Video game, arcade establishments, probably a personal expense. That now there are some examples, and you have to think about like where would that not be, out of the ordinary. And so I'm sitting back and I'm thinking like, okay, maybe Board of Education, a a class takes a trip to the local arcade. Now, does that ever happen? I don't know, but I assume it could. So in that instance, you might actually have a charge to one of the, an establishment like that. Now we may still flag it, and that's fine. It's a good idea to flag it. But chances are people will already know, like, yeah, that was for this event. Like they already know that stuff. Um, so there can be reasons, but generally some of these things, gambling, cruises, pawn shops, florists. Again, florists, that's one. Shouldn't be used to buy flowers, but it says whether it's for funerals or weddings, these are personal situations, not for business use. There should be in violation. Well, actually, a lot of times businesses and agencies, if an employee has, someone very close to them die, a lot of times they will send, flowers on behalf of the agency or whatever to, that person's loved one's funeral. And so that's actually not that uncommon, but what you shouldn't be seeing is a bunch of purchases on Valentine's Day or the day before. That would be indicative that people were not buying them for, to give to someone else on behalf of the department. That would indicate that someone's buying them for the person. So that's just so these are things. So this is what's talking. Then our preliminary analysis, what we want to do is we want to sit back and we've identified certain codes and stuff that might have issues. So now what we want to do is we want to think of tests that we could do that might make some of those instances we've identified pop out. And if I jump back over to the Word document for a second and look here at number 2, analytical procedures such as those we've covered in Tech Lab and which you've read about in your text include basic data analysis, seeking to make information pop out. It's a good way to summarize the data. And I'll put here brainstorm on your group. An example provided. I think there's an example provided. So let's jump back over. So in this instance, now on mine, Mike, hope that's not. On this one, if we jump over to it, you can see this is where the first one was put in. And you guys can leave that if you want to do it, but if you're going to leave it, then you need to do it. But basically, it's saying, hey, using the MCC field on your data, your big data sets to run a bunch of these analytics, count, summation by the different codes, average by codes, standard deviation by codes, maximums by codes. This is the step that you want to actually take. Now, if we jump back over to the one that's been completed, here that they put, what will happen. This will help show what codes are being used the most. It'll help get an idea of where they're being used, etc. They're also going to look at differences between months and see if there's different vendors or different whatever. And I can tell you that, what I saw in the final project last time, whenever it came, well, not the final project, but in this WVSAO project, what I saw, okay, so I was rereading that. So a lot of folks did use like Tableau because they could summarize it and put together a little graph that showed, how many of each type of transaction. So like in the whenever they move like the transaction amount up to like the columns or whatever, they would change it from sum to being like an account. So that way we knew not the dollar value, but how many transactions there were in any given in any given period for whatever the specific item was we were looking at. If it was even that, no, it was just filtering it by which was the biggest. And then what they did is they made a dashboard, and part of that dashboard showed like the top 5. And so whenever they opened the whole workbook up, it was all done, and they had all their links set up. They would change the month on one, and it would give you all the data for the month for the next month. So again, pretty straightforward. Transaction date, count of transaction dates. They use the pivot table. Some of transactions, they did the same thing with the sums, except they did it by person instead of by the MCC code. Then so what the actual deliverable then is you need to add tabs. So like right here, now this isn't, they don't have the data. The data's in their own file. All they've done is copy and paste the values over. Now it's still, you can see here, they still left the links in. Those links don't actually go anywhere. If I were to try and update it, these would all go to 0 and I would get errors. But they copy and pasted it, and it retained the values that were there when they copy and pasted. So, here they've got a pivot table for January and February. They have all these codes over here, which I assume are the unique, or no, count of merchant category code. So my guess is that, there, okay, I need to scroll over. So automated fuel, whatever that is, automated fuel dispenser, that'd be gas stations, 8,110. So they literally have just taken the data and probably used Excel to just do a count. Copy and pasted it over. Here they did this pivot table to show us for the each month, like the changes, and they were looking for like big changes. And some of those it's big, but relatively. So like automated fuel dispensaries went down, by 427, but you have to think about February also has 3 less days, and there just may not have been as much driving due to the cold and the snow and things like that. So that can make sense, and we don't really need to go any farther with that. But if there's something that truly jumps out that doesn't make sense, then that's when you ask more questions. And then they've also here they've plotted this chart where I assume they plotted the average of all the transactions, and so you can see most of them are grouped around this center line, but then they've got some weird standouts. Let's see. 1-2B. This one's literally just a count of transactions for the days. Now, I don't know that they do it on this particular file, but I know somewhere in here, or this particular tab, and I know somewhere in this file, they go through and they actually identify all the weekends, which days are the weekends, and then they would use formulas to pull over, basically look and see, if the date fell on this date or that date, then, return the number here. If not, return 0. So you end up with a large string of data, but most of them are zeros because they don't have the 1 associated with them, which is, what tells them that needs to be selected. So anyway, that's really what it is. It's going through, coming up with all these, a bunch of different preliminary stuff, going through doing the actual test, and then just giving me just that high level sort of screenshot of, this is what the ending result is. And you're not going to use all of this, but you are going to have them you are going to have them there and available, that in case you did want to, use one. Again, like I said, it may not be published in your stuff, but it still helps support every one of these tests you do still helps support what your ultimate findings are. And then, yeah, that's what 1.3 is just basically running through what your findings are. You can see here, these folks put about a paragraph for everything. And that's all there is to it. Is just putting through a paragraph about what they think they found for each one. So that's it. The workpaper 1 series is pretty straightforward. I'll do a quick video for the workpaper 2 series here in a little bit. I'm getting ready to go to class. But for now, I wanted to get this one done and get it up just to answer anyone who had questions, to get them answered. Yep, that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and stop recording, and please look for my next video posted.